Hello, boys and girls and Stingray parents. We are going to be working on solving percent word problems using proportions in a moment. So please get out your notes and your handout, and we will begin in a moment. Hello, boys and girls and Stingray parents. Today we are going to look at solving percent word problems using proportions as our strategy or guide to help us. It's important that we pull out our solving percent word problem and proportions guided notes because we're going to do one of the sample problems from that, as well as tonight's homework, which is solving percent word problems, practice problems, and I believe you have a handout with about 9 word problems on it. So let's first take a look at our guided notes. If you look at the guided notes, you'll notice that there is a core proportion that we're kind of using as our template for solving all of these problems. It's how we set up our proportion. Our proportion basically starts with, we have two ratios that we're comparing. One's a percent, where we have an unknown percent, and we make that equal to a ratio where we have a part of something and we're comparing that to the whole of something, because after all, that's what percent is. 100 here is, whatever percent you have 100 pieces of it. How many of those pieces do you have? That's your percent, and we're comparing it to something where we have a whole here, but we might have the whole thing, but how many parts of the whole do we have? So here's our proportion. Now the 100 is always a given, and then when we look at our word problems, they'll either give us the percent and the part, or the part and the whole, but there'll always be one piece of this puzzle here missing. For example, if we take a look at the problem that they've given us here, Steve will pay 15% interest. Yep, there they go. They told us the interest right off the bat on his $200 credit card bill. Now the $200 credit card bill, that's his whole bill. Okay, how much interest will he owe MasterCard? Okay, so let's set it up. We know that we have 15%, 15 out of 100, 15% of his credit card bill. His credit card bill, the total bill, is $200. We want to find out what 15% of it is. So that's our unknown part. So I'm just using n as my variable. Here we have our proportion, and we need to solve it. And solving proportions are pretty easy. We have there's several different strategies. We can use ratio reasoning, which is my favorite, and I think you should always try that first. The second strategy that I would go to would be cross product or cross multiplication. Cross multiply, I should say. That works very well all the time. You could also create number lines, and there's other strategies. But let's try ratio reasoning first. And sure enough, when I look at the denominators here, when I go from 100 to 200, what's happening? I'm just multiplying it by 200. And if I do that to the denominator, I need to do the same thing to the numerator to keep these fractions equal, or these ratios in proportion to one another. And that's what we're dealing with here. And when I take 15 times 2, that means n will equal $30. $30 is 15% of 200. Okay, now if you go to your handout, which I gave you for homework, there's the very first problem looks like this. It says, if there are 8 boys and 14 girls in the Core 5 class, what percent of the class are girls? Okay, they want to know what percent. They didn't tell us the percent, so I know what the missing piece is. It's something out of 100. They want to know what percent. What information do they give us? They say, well, what do they say? They want to. There's 14 girls, and they want to know that these 14 girls are what proportion of the entire class. Okay, well, the class is made up of boys and girls, and we have 8 boys and 14 girls. So 8 and 14 is 22. So there we have our proportion. what percent, n percent, is equal to 14 over 22? Well, let's try ratio reasoning. Nothing's happening. I don't see anything when I go from 100 to 22 or 22 to 100. That doesn't seem to be working for me. Let's see if I can reduce this fraction. Let's try reducing. 14, I can factor a 2 out of that, and that'll be a 7. If I factor a 2 out of 22, I have 11. 100 to 11. Ratio reasoning isn't working, so I'm going to put that on the back shelf for now, and I'm going to go to my sure thing, cross multiplication. And sure enough, I'm going to do 100 times 7 will give me 700. And then 11 times n will give me 11n. So I have 11n is equal to 700. I want to isolate the variable. I want to solve for the variable, get it all by itself. So I have to use my inverse operation and divide this side by 11. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other to keep these two sides of the equation equal. And I will then have, let me scooch this up a little bit. Okay. I will then have n is equal to 700 divided by 11 is, punch in the calculator, it's 63.63, and this is a repeating decimal, and that's a percent. It's 63.63 out of 100, or 63.63%. That is my final answer. Well, I hope that this was helpful. I want you to finish up the rest of the problems on your own. Remember that these proportions, this base proportion here, is a tool that we use to help us solve these percent word problems, where they usually give us 2 pieces of information of the 3 that we need. We set up a proportion, we use our different strategies to solve. Well, have at it.